Hello and welcome to the Too Much Apparently podcast. If you're new here, this is a podcast for the deeply feeling, overthinking, emotionally overloaded humans who've been told they're too much apparently. And if you're back, thanks for choosing to sit with us again.
We're Alice and Carly, two therapists who are also just sensitive weirdos trying to make sense of life, healing, and our own brains. This isn't a professional advice podcast. It's more like the messy, honest conversations that happen when you finally feel safe enough to say what you're really thinking.
This space is for people like us, the ones who've been called too sensitive, too serious, too emotional, too intense, and have spent way too long believing that it's true.
Okay, on with the episode.
So today we're talking about being too tired for life, that bone deep, everything feels like a mountain kind of tired.
Not just that I could use a nap tired, we mean the kind where burnout, overwhelm, and emotional fatigue have been building for so long that even recovering feels like another impossible task on your to-do list.
If you're someone who feels everything, carries a lot, and tends to push through until you're running on fumes, you'll know exactly what we mean.
We'll explore why sensitive people often burn out harder, why just rest isn't as simple as it sounds, and how to care for yourself when even the healing feels exhausting.
Basically, this one's for anyone who's already tired just listening to this.
Let's get into it. This topic makes me think of, hello, burnout, my old friend.
Yeah.
It's funny talking about this today, actually, because I'm ill.
Right. Yeah.
Just come back from a few weeks off and now I'm ill and having to record a podcast. And this is the first time that I've been ill whilst recording a podcast. And I was thinking yesterday, what do you do when you're struggling with your voice and you feel a bit croaky and snuffly when you then have to record a podcast? And then I was thinking, maybe I'll just sound sexier.
Yeah.
It's like that Friends episode with the Phoebe where she's got that cold and it makes her sound sexier when she's singing. And then when she loses it, she desperately tries to catch another cold so she can still sound sexy when singing. I'll be doing that next week.
Catching another cold.
Well, speaking of this topic, how do you know when it's not just normal tiredness, but that deep whole body exhaustion and fatigue?
Well, I think that kind of emphasis on whole body there is the thing that comes to mind for me first, is that it's not just a bit weary, it's that kind of whole body heaviness. It feels really hard to put into words, doesn't it, actually, the difference between being tired and I feel like I want to get up and just jiggle around and try
Do
and
it.
shake off some of the nerves.
Shall we do it together?
What
Do you want to
am I
get up?
talking about? What am I talking about? Oh, I cannot.
We didn't do any vocal warm-ups either. I didn't do my vocal.
Oh. That's a very singing thing. I don't know anything about vocal warm-ups. I'll just bring my cold voice.
I have the cold voice today.
So when you say whole body like that really stands out to me because it's not just a weariness. It is a whole body heaviness. Like walking through treacle is a phrase that I think people say a lot, that everything just feels kind of heavier and slower. It feels hard to describe it in a way that people who haven't experienced it would understand. What's popping into my head is a couple of times that I've really hit that point of burnout is I've only realized when I've been in the shower and I've been too tired to lift my arms up to wash my hair. That's a real thing. And but also that I feel confused by it because I'm like, but I'm fine. Why can't I lift my arms up to wash my hair? And it's only really then. Usually I'll say to a friend, oh, I was too tired to lift my arms up today. And they kind of go, that I'll then think, oh, okay, maybe this is tipping into burnout again.
And in a way that they don't get if they give you that look?
I think more a look of recognition because they're likely to get it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the knowing look of, I get it. Okay.
Yeah, like we both know this is burnout. What's going on for you that you're not kind of realizing it yourself? Yeah. But that is how it is for me, that I will really be in these cycles of kind of high energy, getting stuff done, and then, slam into a wall and then have to stop. So another sign for me is when I wake up in the morning and I want to cry at the thought of getting out of bed really is a sign.
So do you find that you don't notice how fatigued you are until you hit that wall?
I'm a bit better at it now, I feel when I say now, I mean literally this year.
Okay.
I've known for a long time that it goes in cycles, but I think in the past I saw that as my failing of, I'd look at the times where I'd be able to perform really well and then suddenly I wouldn't be able to do it. And I'd be like, well, what's wrong with me? I'm lazy or I'm broken or, I just need to figure out some way. I need more willpower. I need to push through and
Mhm.
kind of get back. So just this last year, because I'm so determined not to fall back into that burnout cycle again, I've been like a bit like an obsessed detective watching out for signs that I'm tipping into it and really trying to make different decisions. So, it like with creating this podcast has been a big thing for me because I'm so excited about it and I just want to do all the things on it all the time. And I'm having to tell myself, you've got to stop. I have to stop because I have to get up the next day.
Well, I noticed
Um,
that when I'm
mm.
being pinged with notifications that Alice has shared a new Canva thing with you. Alice has shared another one. And then like stream after stream after stream of these notifications of all of these things that you've done. And then I message you and I'm like, what are you doing? How much have you done?
20 reels for a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm also kind of calculating that I've got a couple of weeks off next week, and that feels really important, to have that downtime, which feels like a luxury and is a luxury. Part of what I've thought about in thinking about this episode is how much privilege I have now to be able to protect myself from burnout that I wouldn't have had before when I was working in a call center and wasn't earning as much. Yeah, there's a kind of tricky bit because it feels like a luxury, but also it is a necessity. Like I can't maintain the work that I do and the intensity that I do it without taking a week off every 6 to 8 weeks.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm the same. A couple of thoughts from what you shared there was how fatigue, exhaustion, leading into burnout can come from the not nice things in life, but it can also come from the good things in life and the things we're excited about. And
Mhm.
I know for myself, often the trigger for me going through a burnout period has been lots of doing. And yes, some of those things could be stressful, but often it's my energy is picked up enough that I then start to do all of these different things. And some of them are like really cool, really nice things. And then it's like, hey, why am I here again? And it's sometimes on the back of nice things that I then had to drop out of or stop doing.
Yeah, and that's so hard. It's so hard when you're in that burned out place and not being able to do the things. I think if people misunderstand what that struggle with energy is like, they might just see it as, oh, how lovely to have a day in bed. But it's not, it's boring. I find it really boring. And I just want to get on and live my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see it as the normal tiredness of everyday life, leading into feeling quite fatigued and exhausted. And then the next stage is reaching burnout, which is that absolute total exhaustion. And I think a lot of too much people may relate to feeling more sensitive than others in a lot of ways, big and small. But I found personally, and also in my work, that sensitive, intense, deep, too much people often experience higher levels of tiredness and fatigue than the average person. And there's also a noticeably higher increase in things like chronic pain, chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, and other energy limiting
Mm.
conditions. When we are sensitive, or if we're neurodivergent, we are much more likely to experience those kinds of health conditions and experience more increased episodes of burnout. And I think that deep exhaustion is different from just needing a break. How I sometimes describe it is it's your body running on emergency power, that backup generator.
Mm.
It's already completely depleted, and now we're on this emergency reserve, and there's really not much left in it. And when I think about the difference, so I would say that tiredness comes from a clear cause. You've had a particular busy day, you've been doing a stressful project at work, and you need rest, and rest will probably help. So you will rest, you will feel better. And again, once you've had that short-term rest, the tiredness is recovered from. And so I think of tiredness as being something that is short-lived and quite easily recoverable from when you give yourself that rest or a couple of nights, really good night's sleep, that then your energy levels come back to normal. And I don't know if other people will view it this way, but I see tiredness and sleepiness as different things.
Okay, say more.
So, this is just the way in which I describe it for myself, but I do have chronic fatigue. But for me, it doesn't always equate to sleepiness. And so I think there's different levels of fatigue. But for me, I feel fatigued in my body. It's, as you said, not being able to lift up your hands to wash your hair in the shower. It's bone deep tiredness, but not necessarily sleepiness. So when I think of sleepiness, I think of my eyelids being heavy. I think of them like wanting to, I'm doing, for those that aren't watching the video podcast, my eyes, I'm enacting this. You know, my eyelids are closing. You might have that head bobbing, really finding it hard to stay awake because you're really sleepy. And I don't experience the sleepiness level of fatigue that often because I actually sleep well on paper. I have at least 8 hours sleep a night, honestly, sometimes 9 hours sleep. And at weekends, it can be a little bit more. I can have really good sleep, but because I have chronic fatigue, I never wake up feeling rested. So I never wake up with energy. It could almost be like I've not really slept, or maybe almost like I've had a rubbish night's sleep. That's how my energy feels when I wake up in the morning. And that's why fatigue and tiredness feel a bit different to me than sleepiness, because I can feel so tired in my body, but I'm not actually sleepy because I am actually getting quite a lot of good sleep.
Yeah.
So I don't know if other people would experience it similarly, but it feels very different for me.
Yeah, it feels like an important distinction. And actually, as you say it, I'm like, oh yeah, of course that's the difference, and completely relate to that feeling of being utterly drained. The kind of memory that I have in my head is, I guess, is of being utterly drained, but also my head is still buzzing, and fast and thinking that there isn't a stopping to that side
Yes.
of things. Actually, I think it can even be harder to get to sleep when I'm fatigued.
Yeah. I think
So
some
yeah.
people will probably relate to that as well, because I think our defenses are lowered. We have less energy to even do the things that are good for us. I think when you're fatigued, you can also then get into more unhelpful patterns. Like you're so
Yeah.
tired that you then might doom scroll, for example. You might have more screen time and then it can be harder to get to sleep. Your
Mm-hmm.
brain maybe runs a bit more free at nighttime with
Mm-hmm.
all of the thoughts. So I do think
Yeah.
that can be true for people, that being so fatigued can then mean you then sleep less and then you end up being the fatigued and the sleepiness. When I think about fatigue, I ultimately think about lack of capacity rather than just lack of sleep.
Yeah, I was just going to add on about, so in the pandemic, I got into running. And so I was doing a lot of physical exercise. And I remember the feeling of being physically tired was something that I was unfamiliar with. And then since having had COVID, my fatigue is so much worse. So I had glandular fever when I was a teenager, and I've always had lower energy levels since then. But again, since COVID, and just that struggle to, people say, oh, go for a walk, you'll get more energy. But that's not always the case. That I could be out for a walk and, be halfway around my walk and just feeling like I can't take another step.
Yeah, yeah. I so know that feeling. I have had similar advice when I talk about not having much energy, and a lot of people say, "Oh, you need to get yourself down the gym or start exercising because it gives you energy and everything." And I do those things, and sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's, as you say, not true. It's the opposite, and it actually makes me worse. So I think that advice is well intentioned, and I think it's definitely true for a lot of people. But if you're somebody who struggles with being tired a lot, being easily burnt out, being fatigued, having health conditions, those kinds of things, then I don't think it's always true. I think it depends on what you're experiencing at that time. And sometimes it's advice that is going to make it worse.
And that's one of the things that makes living with chronic fatigue, it can be a really fine balance to manage. Because sometimes I can go for a walk and it does make me feel more energized and I feel a lot better for it. And other times it makes me feel worse and I wish I hadn't gone. And often I don't know until I'm already out on the walk.
Yes, that's the hardest part about these things. You don't know till you've done it.
Yeah. And just that it is such a fine balance. And because I do, I can have that perfectionist streak. I know that I hold this idea that if I can just figure out the right sequence of self-care things, that I'll crack it, that I'll finally, be out of the burnout cycle forever. I don't want to sound too negative, but I sometimes wonder if this is going to be a lifelong thing for me. I think it probably is. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that actually, because when you just said, "Oh, I don't want to be too negative," the thoughts that were coming up in my mind is we're talking about this and we're laughing about it, and there will be people that relate and part of this that are humorous. But as you were talking, a voice came up in my mind was, "You're talking about this quite jovially, Carly, but actually, this is something that's really hard
Yeah.
in your life. And if I was to allow myself to really connect to it, I'd probably I would get emotional
Yeah.
because it's actually really, really difficult. And I live with chronic pain and quite a few health conditions as well. So when you put all of those things together, it does actually have a massive impact on my life. And day to day, it's something that I just, well, get on with. And when I say get on with, I don't mean being a martyr and ignoring it and not trying to look after myself. But also, when you're constantly tired and in pain, there's only so many times you can say, "I'm tired, I'm in pain." So you do just kind of get on with it. But I've noticed that that means I don't often emotionally connect to it. So anytime I go to see my consultant, for example, and I have to actually sit and talk about what life is like for me, it's like the gates instantly open and the tears flow. And I think it's important, as we've been talking, to actually recognize that, yes, there's humor in this stuff and we'll probably continue to laugh about it. But also, it is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of the reason I don't have a diagnosis is probably down to a lot of denial, has been a kind of main way of focusing on it. But I've spent a long time focusing on my mental well-being and not a lot on my physical well-being. And I'm shifting that now. And my GP is just horrible. And I hate going to her. And the last time I went and tried to talk about some of this stuff, she basically said, "I can't talk to you about that," which, and I did cry.
Yeah, I don't get
And
it. I don't get how you could have had that response. It makes me really cross.
right. Yeah.
Cross.
How,
That sounds like such a mild word actually for what I feel cross. No, I feel rage when I hear these kinds
yeah.
of things.
Yeah. And it boggles my mind when people in caring professions are not caring. And I know they're under so much pressure and it has to be better. It has to be. It's not right to come out of a doctor's appointment crying and feeling like you don't ever want to go back
No,
there. That's not
no.
right. And I know that that's a common thing as well when people go to the GP, that they're dismissed. Definitely for me, it's been a lot of the time, I think it's been put down to depression. I don't think I think maybe I was depressed, but I don't think it was just depression. I think depression was more a symptom of what else was going on rather than the main thing. But I think a lot of times, like, nothing even happens, like blood tests will be done and they'll come back normal and that will just be end of conversation. It'll just be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, it's fine. You must be stressed. It'll pass. Take more
Yeah.
breaks."
Take more breaks. Yeah. 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 I've not had too much of a bad response from GPs, but I have had some bad responses from consultants that have left me in tears. And I've also had some excellent
Mm.
consultants. But even though I do have diagnoses now, they've been over 10 years in the making, bit by bit, uncovering more and more. And it takes so much energy just to even therefore go to the doctors and fit health appointments in. I have so many health appointments, trying to fit them in. And when you're self employed as well, is a genuine nightmare. It's like I'm trying to get help for my fatigue, but the process is worsening my fatigue in the first place. It's like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
boggles the mind.
The battle for healthcare. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've been speaking a lot about fatigue, and I know we've touched upon burnout as well. So it might just be good to think about for ourselves and perhaps for anybody listening is how do we know when it goes from, so we've spoke about going from tired to being exhausted and being fatigued. And then at what point do we then start to enter burnout?
I think I struggle to answer that because of my experience being go, 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 drop.
Okay. Yes.
That actually I'm still trying to pick up on what are the signs.
Yeah.
How is it for you? What do you notice?
So, because my day-to-day experience involves being fatigued and really not having much energy at all, I know that I can be fatigued and not be in burnout. And so, the distinction for myself when I'm starting to go into burnout is when the responsibilities and demands of life feel so overwhelming. So, I can be fatigued and still largely get stuff done. And yep, sometimes I won't, but that can be okay. But when that starts to become now overwhelming, where I can't do that and I can't do that, and actually, like you said, now I'm struggling to have the energy to even shower, cook, take care of myself. And also when my skills start to regress. So when I talk about not having the energy to do certain things, it's also like I lose the skills and ability to even do those things as well. And I really need to have someone else step in and take that responsibility away from me. And I almost feel, no, I definitely feel embarrassment about saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sometimes, even things like showering, when I really struggle with, and I'm not showering as often as I should. Sometimes I'll say to my partner, I need your support to help me shower. And what that will look like is I'll go in the shower and he will sit in the bathroom and read to me whilst I shower.
Well, that's lovely.
And just having someone else there whilst I'm doing the difficult task and reading me the book that I'm really enjoying at the moment just helps me get that task done. And so it's when I start to need those things. And the reason I was reluctant to share it is because, of course, the little shame voice pops up in the back of my head. You can't admit this. That doesn't sound very adult. You're sounding like a child needing that support. And so currently there's a bit of an alarm in my head, like, blur, blur, don't admit this, blur, blur. But why not? That's what happens to me. That's the support that I need when I get into those moments. So when I think of burnout, it is the loss of a lot of daily life skills and literally feeling so overwhelmed with the demands of life that aren't, when I say even that demanding, I don't mean that as a judgment, but in day-to-day life aren't that demanding, but they become demanding when you're in burnout.
Yeah. So let me join with you in well, actually, I don't feel most of me doesn't feel embarrassed to share this alongside you. But yeah, no, there is a little voice in the back that's like, don't talk about not brushing your teeth. It's gross.
Yep.
Yeah. But it's actually, it's one of the things that really turned my life around was sharing with my therapist that I couldn't even bring myself to brush my teeth. And for a while, the way that we did it was when I brushed my teeth, I would send her a little, the emoji with the kind of teeth bearing,
Yes.
that one. I would
Yeah.
send her that and she would send me back like a clapping emoji or a thumbs up or something like that until I got the hang of it.
Yeah.
And again, teeth brushing is one of the ways that I know that things are starting to slip. If I'm too tired to brush my teeth,
Yes.
I know that things are starting to slip.
Yes.
And I am aware that before we started this episode, I said I woke up and I felt like I wanted to cry at the thought of getting out of bed. And still there's that reluctance to look at it. And maybe that's because I know I've got this time off and I know I'm going to be able to stop.
Yes.
But so when those signs are there, not wanting to admit them, because I know it's going to mean having to slow down and I don't want to slow down.
I mean, you've just admitted it on the podcast. So now it's out there. You're going to have to listen and heed the advice that we're talking about right now on this podcast and actually listen to your body.
I have got a great denial system going on. This time could be different.
It won't. I'm telling you now, it won't. I will counteract that denial voice.
Yeah.
I think when we do know we have a break coming up, we can push through a bit more. And I'm still not always sure that that's a good thing. But we are also human and life happens and there are things that need to get done. And I think that's why this makes it really hard. I think it makes it hard for anybody, but especially if you're sensitive. I mean, do you think sensitive people get burnt out more often or do you think they just burn out more deeply?
I think probably both. I'm getting stuck because what I'm thinking is, what do I mean by a sensitive person? Because that's such a broad range of people. And the different kinds of sensitivity are going to be impacted in different ways. But where I'm broadly going to, it is thinking about people's nervous systems. And the two things that I think about when I think about me being a sensitive person is being ADHD, so more autistic than ADHD, and having CPTSD, so complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and the different ways that they impact my energy levels and my nervous system. So when I'm thinking about, do sensitive people get burnt out more often or more deeply? I recognize that my nervous system is more sensitive than other people's,
Mhm.
partly because I'm autistic, partly because of the trauma that I've experienced.
Yeah.
But I don't think of myself as a sensitive person.
Okay.
And there's parts of me that really, kind of push back against that. Um, so I don't want to get into a full on philosophical debate about what sensitive means, but what I think about is having a more sensitive nervous system. So you're picking up on more things. So you're more likely to get overloaded by things because of sensitivity to sounds, to smells, to visual things, just on a sensory level. But also, so that's like the external environment can be more overwhelming, but also the internal process can be more overwhelming as well. So we've talked already a bit at episode 3 about having a busy mind. So I think it's much easier to find yourself in burnout if you've got a busy mind, partly because you're thinking more, and partly because it's harder to stop.
Yeah, you're saying from your experience that for those of us who have sensitive nervous systems, because of the extra busyness of the external world that we're taking in, and then the way in which our internal worlds work, that we have a higher incidence of becoming burnt out and potentially being burnt out more deeply. And then if we're burnt out more deeply, potentially taking longer to recover from. I
Yeah.
mean, I know from those in the community, whether that's people who class themselves as sensitive, if you're autistic, ADHD, just someone who feels that they process the world deeply, when you spend time in those communities and in those spaces, so much of the conversation is almost how to cope with the tiredness of life and how to stop being burnt out. It's like you said earlier, you almost are searching still for this answer that means burnout just
Yeah.
doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And when your brain and your body work the way in which ours does, I don't think it's possible to stop it. I
Mm.
think it's about prevention and increasing the time period between episodes of burnout. But I think because of the world that we live in, unless we are insanely privileged and can radically change the life that we live, I think we will always get there.
So I don't want to hear it.
I
Because
don't want
I'm
to
in
hear
it.
it, and I said it.
Because at the moment I'm really in a good phase, and I think that actually this has been the longest that I've been able to stay up, if you like. And also because I recognize that I'm not hyper up, that actually I am maintaining a middle-ish, even if I am going overboard creating social media for the podcast, that I'm in a very hopeful phase at the moment. And I feel like what I'm telling myself is at the moment that I'm getting better at recognizing the signs, and I'm being able to make decisions to stop when I wouldn't have been able to do that in the past. It's not the shiny image that you see being sold on Instagram, is the way that I think about it. Even though I feel in a better place with it, and like maybe I have shifted something, there are still days where I've had to spend a day in bed at the weekend.
Yeah. I've spent a long time, over a decade, trying to find the answer that means this
Mm,
doesn't happen anymore. And
mm.
I used to experience burnout literally like clockwork every 12 to 18 months. It would happen within that time period. And I would think XYZ was the problem, usually my job, I would change my job, which is why part of the reason why I've had so many jobs. And this is, as a therapist in private practice, the longest that I have stayed in any job. Before this, the longest I've been in a job is 18 months. And I've been doing this now for a few years. So something is better, at least. Before, I would used to have quite a big chunk of time off work before I changed my job. When I was burnt out, I would go off sick for a good few months, go back, change my job, cycle would repeat. Whereas this time, yes, I have still had periods of burnout and I've maybe had a month off. And I still have to have quite a bit of time off work. But I've never had a period like what I used to have when I was a nurse working in the NHS than what I do now working for myself in private practice. And so even though I have come more to terms with there will never be the answer, even doing this job, I've still found myself feeling burnt out. But thankfully, it's not lasted as long because of things I've been able to put in place and I can come out of it quicker. I've spent 10 years searching for the answer. And for me, I actually have found hope in a weird way of knowing that there isn't an answer. It will still happen again. And I think the hope in that for me is weirdly, that makes me feel more in control. It's almost like a letting go of chasing. Now that I'm saying it, I'm like, you've not totally let it go, Carly. But I'm like, no, but I've done a good job. I've largely tried to let go of staving it off. I don't think I've let go of still trying to search for making it better and better and better. But right now, I've reached a place where it doesn't happen as often. When it does, I come out of it quicker. I can spot the signs quicker. I can do the things that I need to do. And I think all of that has helped me get to where I am. And that is a much better place than where I was, say, even five years ago.
So hearing you talk about it like that feels familiar, and kind of feel like perhaps we are in similar places, even if we are talking about it differently. And because I think actually, it's been a really long time. So it was my private practice anniversary yesterday, 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
Yeah. And I don't think I've ever taken a big chunk of time off, basically because I couldn't afford to. There have definitely been periods where I have worked through burnout, where I have literally got out of bed, sat with clients, got back in bed, and done nothing else. But when I was in employment, and perhaps this is a perk of sick pay, I would push through a year because that meant I would get sick pay and then take 3 or 4 months off because that was the only way that I could manage it. I think, and actually my cycles I think are a lot shorter. I think my cycle would be 6 months at best and more like 4 months between hitting burnout. But I think I have been up-ish. Correct me if I'm wrong. You might remember better than me, but I think I've been up-ish for nearly a year.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And particularly this year, so 2025,
Yes.
I've really made it a focus to not overdo it. There might have been a little bit actually at Christmas because I was going to run a group and I had to pull it because I got ill 3 times in a month. That's a giveaway. If I get ill,
illness,
and a lot, I've probably missed some things. So I think maybe there was at Christmas, but particularly this year, actually, I think. And the thing, what I'm putting it down to at the moment, so I may well smash into the wall again and be like, oh no, I was just in the knot. What I'm putting it down to is letting go of the guilt and letting go of the expectation. So actually now, if I have been working really hard all week, and actually quite a lot of the time that we've been preparing for this podcast to launch, I've been doing 12-hour days, sometimes more than that. So actually, if I need to spend the day in bed on a Saturday, I'm calling that neurodivergent balance.
Okay.
I'm just embracing the balance. That is just the balance for me. And some people wouldn't want to be that way. And I would prefer it if it was different. So I didn't have to just be in bed. But I think I am just embracing that as a different way of having balance in my life, that there's a choice there, that I can push and do all of this extra work, but I am going to pay the price for it. And is that the price I want to pay? And I need to make a choice. Whereas in the past, I don't think I would have even had that awareness, I would just be like, woo, this is great, this is fun, this is exciting. And then like, oh God, cut. Can't do anymore. Yeah.
It's a little bit like what I spoke to earlier. It's acceptance of knowing how things will be. And then we have the power to make a choice. So we know we can do this, and then this will likely happen. And then can we be okay with it? So, like yourself, I will recognize now that I need Saturday to be a nothing day, for example. Or I need it to be a day where I might just have a pajama day, get cozy on the sofa, read my fantasy book all day, or play on my Nintendo Switch some sort of nice, wholesome game. Sometimes it does include doing a gentle walk with my dog. Sometimes it's not even going out and it's just totally staying in. And being able to do that, knowing that, oh, okay, this day's busy, this day's busy. Ah, but Saturday, it's clear. Nothing makes me happier than looking at days in my diary and there being nothing in it. And I love the idea of this because I know a few people who, if they were to look in their calendar and see nothing, would panic about
Yeah.
not having anything scheduled. And I find that so interesting because when I see a day that's empty, my whole body just goes, ah,
Ah, yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I'll join that side with you because I know that feeling so well.
You're the
Yeah.
same. Yeah, but
Yeah.
a few friends that I know would see that and they would panic and they would scramble to get stuff in.
Yeah. Yeah. Horses for courses, isn't it? Yeah. It's another thing that I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel, yeah. So I think a lot of my kind of desperate clinging to hope that I've cracked something, if not all of it, part of it, is the fear of getting into that place of struggling to bounce back. So what do you think it is that makes it harder for us to bounce back?
I think once we're entered into burnout, whether we're classing that as flirting with the edge of burnout or actually in burnout, which can look from anything from mild to severe, what can make it hard for us to bounce back is the length of time needed to recover. And I think we drastically underestimate the time that's needed to recover from burnout. Research shows even if you do one intense project at work that you've worked over your hours for and then find yourself exhausted afterwards, just from that one acute period of overworking can equal 3 months of needing to recover. And that's just from that one thing. And so if you then add in chronic stress, chronic fatigue, chronic struggling with our mental health, and throw in a sensitive nervous system on top of that, when we push, and then we reach that point of burnout, when we reach that point of burnout, it can take a really long time to recover. And in some cases, years. And I think years is quite hard for people to get their head around. That's why prevention is so important, or being able to recognize the signs early so that perhaps it's more mild. And when I say mild, by the way, mild burnout is still really bad. But if we end up just dipping into burnout and then we find our way able to come back out, then hopefully it won't last. It won't last as long. And again, even though it's a bit scary, research shows if you've been in particularly bad burnout that's lasted for a long time, some parts of your cognition don't actually recover. And so your memory can remain affected for the rest of your life. Your ability to think quick or experiencing more brain fog can end up lasting years after the event, at the very least, in terms of where research is up to. So it's something that we need to take really seriously. And I think we don't, for lots of reasons.
Yeah, and I can feel that denial again, of wanting to kind of stick my fingers in my ears as you're talking and just go la 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 la. So I was saying on a previous episode about my brain working like coat hangers that kind of stack onto each other. In the pandemic, I just had a period where they were just all on the floor. They were just all on the floor, and
Yeah.
they're not back to where they were. They're not back to where they were.
And so
I can see that.
And so a good night's sleep or having one day chilling out on the sofa or taking it easy isn't going to cut it. And
No.
I think that's why we struggle to bounce back, because we struggle to do that, because so many of us struggle with messaging and conditioning around what it means to quote unquote do nothing.
Yeah.
usually when people say, I did nothing, what they mean is they rested, but we think that that's nothing and that's a
Yeah.
bad thing.
Mm.
Lots of us have guilt because we live in society that praises and rewards productivity. So if we're not being productive, we feel bad and we feel guilty, so we don't do it.
Yeah.
Or to speak from my own experience, we end up in this boom and bust cycle where when we're in the boom, where we're doing, we bust. And then the moment our energy comes back, we boom and we do all of the things again because we're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I've got my energy back. Right. And we go and do it all again. And then, why do I find myself back here? I ultimately think that's why we find it hard to bounce back. And to be honest, if I was to summarize that in a single word, I'd probably just say capitalism.
Yeah. So what you were saying about productivity, and I see rest now as part of productivity. Like that is part of the process, that I cannot be productive unless I am properly resting. So the other word that came up for me is laziness. And I thought, "Oh, that's a moral judgment that is bound in capitalism, isn't it? Here we go. It's last time it was the patriarchy, this time it's capitalism. It's always both. Yeah. Yeah.
Laziness is such a big one, such a big
Yeah.
one. And it's been a big one in my life as well.
Hmm.
So, talking about rest, we've said that we need rest, and rest comes in so many different forms. What does
Yeah.
rest look like to you?
Rest looks like to me, I think it depends where I am. So currently I'm doing okay. So rest looks like, I feel like I want to say it looks fairly normal. I'm doing air quotes there for anyone who's listening, not watching. Um, you know, getting to bed on time, making sure that um when I've got allocated, and I do allocate rest time, that I'm not then trying to come up with more ideas for the podcast or make more plans for what I'm going to do with my family or, whatever else. I think part of this is like, oh my God, am I actually resting at the moment? I don't think I am.
So, you've caught yourself.
Again. Yeah. Well, I tell you what rest looks like for me. It looks like watching a classic Emmerdale and classic Coronation Street. That's what it looks like. I think maybe this is it actually. Maybe when I think about rest, I think about sitting on the sofa and doing nothing. But I don't actually really enjoy that very much. So I think about rest and think about what is restorative for me. And that's more about bringing little joys into my life. So things like a really cheap bunch of flowers, like from Sainsbury's, they sell them for like £3. So just having some flowers on my desk, or I follow quite a lot of poetry accounts, and I love watching people perform their own poetry. There's something about it that builds me back up. So it's not just the letting go of things; it's also about what are the little things that are going to build me back up. When it's getting really bad, it is a dark room, so no lights on, blackout curtains closed, phone off, sensory deprivation, really. Yeah. Yeah. What's it like for you?
So again, it depends on the level of exhaustion that I'm experiencing. If it is really bad, that is pajama days, again, sensory deprivation, making it having nicer lighting, making it darker, quieter, those kinds of things. So sometimes it's about the removal of all this external stimuli. And other times it's just what I would class as radical self care. And so often when people talk about self care, they think of bubble baths and face masks and those kinds of things, and don't often think about self care for what it truly is. Self care ultimately is really looking after yourself. And looking after yourself is about checking where your boundaries are at and shoring them up. Are you overdoing? Are you overgiving? Are you creating space and time for yourself? So, checking in on your boundaries. And then, if needed, saying no to people, clawing back more time and space for yourself, cancelling plans if necessary, scheduling in me time. It's removing responsibility and demands that are placed upon you. So, can you lean on people around you to take on a little bit more so that you're not having to hold as many things? So, being able to ask for help. And the things that help replenish me are the things that tap into sometimes the things that help replenish me are actually more childlike things. So tapping into that sense of awe and wonder that children easily experience, I don't know, just by blowing bubbles or something. But it's trying to tap into that in whatever way I can. Time with the dogs, getting creative, definitely. Obviously, if I'm really burnt out, there's no energy for even that. But the moment I start to get a bit of energy, I will do something creative with it, and not big creative, not about perfectionism, making a really cool piece of art. It's often something really simple that doesn't take much, like an adult coloring book. You can tap into your creative side with little effort, and things that won't take much mental effort. So I will rewatch the same shows that I've already seen. There's no surprises. I know exactly what's going to happen and what the storyline is. Reading familiar books. Yeah, so I would say ultimately it's about doing the types of activities that you find restful and replenishing, and checking in on how you're spending your time. Where are you prioritizing yourself? How busy are you? How much are you doing for others? And changing all of those things. And then asking for help to reduce some of the responsibilities and demands. And that's kind of my burnout menu of things that I've recognized and compiled over the last decade, if not probably longer, of the things that I know that I need. And the key thing is starting to do those things when you see that it's approaching, not when you're already in it.
Yeah, prevention is so important. And you raised something really important there about play. So, you mentioned about childlike things, but actually, I think it's really important that we have play as adults. And again, I think this absolutely attaches onto capitalism and what we value as adults, what society values. So one of the questions that I ask in my intake when I take on a new client is, what do you do for fun? And the amount of people that cannot answer that question is staggering. But also, I think it is such an important part of having good mental health,
Yeah.
having a way to play.
Definitely. Well, I feel like the episode needs to come to an end, and as usual, have so much more left to say. I definitely think we're going to need to revisit this topic. Well, if you're listening and you're in that deep, tired place, you're not lazy, you're not behind, you're just carrying more than people can see.
You don't need to earn your rest, and you don't need to rush your way back to normal.
Healing for sensitive people isn't about pushing harder. It's about letting yourself move at the pace your body and mind actually need.
Stick with us for future episodes on how to rest without guilt so we can begin to heal and recover from burnout. Next time, we're talking about being too nice to say no, when you're nodding along, saying yes with a smile, while part of you inside is screaming, please no.
We'll get into why it feels so hard to say no, the guilt hangover that follows, and how learning to set boundaries isn't about being selfish. It's about finally being as kind to yourself as you are to everyone else.
But now we'll leave you with this. What could you compile on your burnout menu to help you give yourself the deep care you need? That's all from us today. If this episode made you feel a bit less alone, the best way to help us reach more people is to subscribe, rate the podcast, and follow Too Much Apparently on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Those simple clicks help other sensitive humans find us when they need it most. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.